Sergeant Maya Thompson, a dedicated black soldier, was finally returning home after a grueling deployment overseas. The months away had taken a significant toll on her, leaving her both physically and emotionally exhausted. Carrying a heavy duffel bag over her shoulder, Maya navigated the bustling airport with thoughts of reuniting with her family and getting some much-needed rest. Her military uniform, faded and worn from the harsh conditions she had endured, spoke volumes about her service and sacrifices. Despite her weariness, she carried herself with quiet strength and dignity. As Maya boarded her flight, she was pleasantly surprised to discover that her seat had been upgraded to first class. She wasn't sure if it was a gesture of appreciation for her service, but it filled her with gratitude. Slightly out of place among the passengers in business suits, she settled into the plush seat, hoping for a peaceful journey home. As Sergeant Maya Thompson settled into her seat in first class, she allowed herself a small sigh of relief. The weight of her long deployment, both physical and emotional, seemed to lift slightly as she prepared to enjoy a rare moment of comfort. However, her respite was short-lived. A well-dressed man in his late 40s approached her, his expression a mix of annoyance and disbelief. Standing in the aisle, he hesitated for a moment before speaking, his tone laced with irritation. "Excuse me," he said, looking directly at her. "I think you're in the wrong seat. This is first class." Maya, momentarily confused, looked up at him. "I believe this is my seat," she replied, showing him her ticket. 3A. The man examined her ticket, his eyes narrowing as he glanced back at her, clearly unimpressed. "There must be some kind of mistake. Soldiers don't fly first class," he said curtly. "You belong in coach." Maya felt a flush of embarrassment and anger rise within her. She was no stranger to prejudice, but it still stung every time it happened. Taking a steadying breath, she responded firmly, "I'm sorry, sir, but this is the seat that was assigned to me." The man scoffed and muttered under his breath, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Unbelievable," he said, shaking his head. "First class isn't for people like you." Maya felt the weight of judgmental stares from the other passengers. Some seemed curious, others uncomfortable, but no one spoke up. She considered offering to switch seats just to avoid further escalation, but before she could, a flight attendant appeared. "Is there a problem here?" the flight attendant asked, her tone polite yet firm. The man quickly recounted the situation, but the flight attendant smiled at Maya. "Sergeant Thompson, your seat is indeed in first class. Thank you for your service," she said warmly before addressing the man. "Sir, your seat is in 5A, just a couple of rows back." Red-faced, the man huffed and retreated to his seat without another word, leaving Maya to sit in a mix of frustration and relief. As the tension between Sergeant Maya Thompson and the man escalated, a flight attendant approached with a professional yet authoritative demeanor. "Is there a problem here?" she asked, her voice calm but firm, cutting through the murmurs of the surrounding passengers. The man, clearly flustered, wasted no time explaining. "There's obviously been a mistake. She's in the wrong seat. This is first class," he said, gesturing dismissively at Maya. The flight attendant listened patiently, then turned to Maya with a warm smile. "Sergeant Thompson, may I see your ticket?" she asked politely. Maya handed it over, and the attendant quickly verified the seat assignment. "Your seat is indeed in 3A, the flight attendant confirmed. She then turned back to the man, her tone maintaining its professional edge. "Sir, your seat is in 5A, just a couple of rows behind. Please take your seat, so we can prepare for departure." The man's face turned a deep shade of red. He glanced around as if seeking validation from other passengers, but no one spoke up. Instead of apologizing, he huffed in frustration, grabbed his carry-on, and stormed off to his assigned seat. "Thank you for your service, Sergeant," the flight attendant said, turning back to Maya with a kind expression. "If you need anything during the flight, please don't hesitate to let me know." Maya nodded, murmuring a quiet "thank you" as the attendant walked away. While the incident was resolved, Maya couldn't shake the mix of emotions swirling inside her: relief, frustration, and lingering embarrassment. She adjusted her seatbelt and tried to focus on the journey ahead, hoping to put the unsettling encounter behind her. As the plane ascended, Sergeant Maya Thompson stared out the window, her thoughts drifting to her time in the military. She reflected on the sacrifices she had made, the sleepless nights, the dangers faced, and the comrades she had lost. Despite all she had given for her country, moments like the earlier confrontation reminded her that prejudice still lingered, even against those who served. The weight of that reality settled heavily on her, mingling with her exhaustion. Out of the corner of her eye, Maya noticed the man in 5A casting occasional glares in her direction. His expression was filled with disdain, making her feel uneasy despite the physical distance between them. Though she tried to brush it off, the tension left her unsettled, a sharp reminder of the biases she often encountered. Determined not to let the incident define her journey, Sergeant Maya Thompson decided to address the situation in her own way. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small notepad, her mind racing with thoughts. Instead of dwelling on the negativity, she chose to take the high road, crafting a heartfelt note to the man in 5A. In her message, Maya explained her pride in serving her country, sharing a glimpse of the sacrifices she and her fellow soldiers had made to protect the freedoms everyone enjoys. She wrote about the cost of those freedoms, friends she had lost, hardships endured, and the memories she carried of those who never made it home. Her words reflected her hope for a world where people could see past their differences and embrace kindness and shared humanity. Satisfied with her message, Maya folded the note carefully and called over the flight attendant. Handing it to her with a quiet request, she asked if the attendant could deliver it to the man. The flight attendant, who had witnessed the earlier conflict, nodded with a supportive smile. Maya watched as the attendant approached the man and handed him the note. His expression shifted from surprise to something more complex as he opened and began to read it. Though Maya couldn't tell exactly what he was feeling, she hoped her words would leave a meaningful impact, bridging the gap that prejudice had momentarily created. As the man in 5A unfolded the note handed to him by the flight attendant, his expression shifted from surprise to introspection. He read it once, then again, and yet again, each time lingering on the words. Maya's heartfelt message seemed to resonate deeply, leaving him lost in thought for the remainder of the flight. Gone was the earlier air of entitlement. His demeanor softened as he processed her words. When the plane began its descent, Maya prepared to disembark, eager to leave the uncomfortable encounter behind. But as she stood to retrieve her bag, the man approached her hesitantly. There was no trace of his earlier hostility. Instead, his posture was subdued, his expression apologetic. "Sergeant Thompson," he began, his voice quieter than before. "I wanted to thank you for your note. It really made me think." He paused, his gaze dropping to the floor. "I realize now that I was out of line earlier. I made assumptions about you that were completely unfair, and I'm truly sorry for that." Maya studied his face, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. His words, though late, held genuine regret. She nodded gently. "It takes courage to admit when you're wrong." "Thank you for that," she replied. The man introduced himself as David and shared a personal revelation. He had lost his brother, also a soldier in Afghanistan, which had stirred emotions he hadn't expected. Maya offered her condolences, and in that moment, a bridge of understanding formed between them. As the plane came to a stop, the man from 5A approached Maya with a changed demeanor. Gone was the arrogance and hostility that had marked their earlier exchange. Instead, he seemed vulnerable, almost uncertain. "I'm David," he began, his voice softer and more measured. "I just wanted to say I'm truly sorry for the way I treated you earlier. It was unfair and uncalled for." Maya nodded, appreciating his effort to make amends. Before she could respond, David hesitated, then continued, his voice tinged with emotion. "The truth is, my brother was a soldier. He served in Afghanistan, but he didn't make it home. Seeing you in uniform brought back a lot of memories, and I didn't handle it well. I let my emotions get the better of me." Hearing this, Maya felt a wave of empathy wash over her. She understood the pain of loss all too well. "I'm so sorry for your loss," she said, her voice sincere. "It's never easy losing someone you care about, especially in service to their country." David's eyes glistened as he nodded. "Thank you. And thank you for what you do. I realize now how much strength it takes to serve and carry those memories with you." Maya extended her hand, which David took gratefully. "It means a lot to hear that," she replied. The two exchanged a moment of mutual understanding. Their initial conflict transformed into a connection rooted in shared respect and humanity. As the passengers began to disembark, David turned to Maya one last time, a mixture of gratitude and humility in his expression. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a business card and handed it to her. "If you ever need anything," he said sincerely, "please don't hesitate to reach out. And again, thank you for your service." Maya accepted the card with a small smile, slipping it into her pocket. "Thank you, David," she replied. "Take care of yourself." As she watched him walk away, Maya felt a sense of peace settle over her. What had begun as a tense and uncomfortable encounter had ended with understanding and respect. David's willingness to confront his own biases and apologize reminded her of the power of humility and connection. Sitting for a moment to gather her things, Maya reflected on the encounter. It wasn't the first time she had faced prejudice, and it likely wouldn't be the last. But this experience felt different. Instead of leaving her angry or defeated, it filled her with a quiet hope. The incident reaffirmed her belief that even in moments of conflict, there is potential for growth. People can learn, change, and come together, even when their differences seem insurmountable. As Maya walked toward her next destination, she carried with her not only the weight of her service, but also the renewed belief that kindness and understanding are always worth fighting for. The story concludes with a powerful message about growth, compassion, and the value of bridging divides. What began as a tense and uncomfortable conflict transformed into a moment of mutual understanding and respect. Both Maya and David were able to see past their initial prejudices and connect as fellow human beings, proving that even in moments of tension there is room for change and reconciliation. This encounter serves as a reminder that kindness and empathy can create meaningful connections, even in the face of bias or misunderstanding. It highlights the importance of seeing each other not for our differences, but for our shared humanity. As the narrative ends, viewers are encouraged to reflect on their own experiences of connection and understanding. Have you ever had a moment where you bridged a gap with someone despite your differences? Share your stories in the comments below, because every act of compassion brings us one step closer to a world filled with kindness and unity.